You know that feeling, right? You are just staring at a completely blank screen, just watching that little cursor blink.
Oh, yeah. It is brutal.
It really is. You have this huge deadline looming over you, like maybe it's a thesis proposal or some journal submission, and you're sitting there trying to figure out what original, groundbreaking idea you can possibly contribute to your field.
Right, the novelty factor.
Exactly. But the more literature you read, the more it feels like absolutely everything worth saying has already been said. And, well, usually by people much smarter than you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a universally paralyzing moment. Because whether you're a master's student looking at your first major dissertation, or a doctoral candidate, or even just a seasoned professional trying to get published, I mean, everyone hits this exact wall. The whole scientific fraternity, right, it demands novelty as this baseline requirement for entry. You literally have to produce something new to be allowed into the club.
But the irony here, and this is exactly what we're unpacking today, the irony is that science rarely actually trains people on how to systematically find those novel ideas.
No, not at all. They just say, go find a research gap.
Right, just find a gap. And you're sitting there thinking, well, I thought the experts already figured all of this out. It's incredibly intimidating.
It really is.
Which is exactly why Dr. Arup Giri's recent framework caught my eye. Okay, let's unpack this. Because his script, which is aimed at early career researchers, argues that we are fundamentally misunderstanding what a gap actually is.
We absolutely are, yeah. Novice researchers are essentially just left to fend for themselves. And that creates this immense, totally artificial pressure to somehow reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
But when we look really closely at Dr. Giri's curriculum, the mission for our deep dive today becomes super clear. We need to completely demystify this dreaded research gap.
Yes, please.
Right. So we're going to decode a really famous 7-part taxonomy of where these gaps actually hide. We'll explore some genuinely clever search strategies and then, walk through a structural formula for writing a gap statement that actually gets approved.
I love that. But to do that, we have to start by completely redefining the target itself. Because according to the source material, a research gap is simply an unanswered question or an unresolved problem within a field.
Exactly.
It's just an area where the existing knowledge is incomplete or maybe outdated, contradictory, or just inadequate.
Yeah, and the trap that causes all that blank screen paralysis we were just talking about is the assumption that finding a gap means discovering a completely brand new, never before heard of topic.
Right, a whole new world.
Yeah, the source actually refers to this as looking for a new galaxy of knowledge.
A new galaxy, which is frankly an impossible standard for almost anyone, let alone a student. You don't need a new galaxy. A perfectly robust research gap can be found by just, shifting the parameters of what already exists.
Right. Like, you might investigate a totally different population than previous studies. Or you could take a really well-established theory, but drop it into a completely new context. You could use a different methodology, or honestly, just use newer, more granular data to reevaluate old findings.
It totally makes me think of renovating a house.
Oh, how so?
Well, when you need a place to live, you don't have to go out into the uncharted wilderness and build a massive new mansion from scratch.
Yeah.
Right? That's the new galaxy.
Right.
Sometimes you just buy an existing house and say, upgrade the plumbing.
Oh, I see. So that's like using newer data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or maybe you add a sunroom to an old floor plan.
Yeah.
That's applying an established theory to a different context. You're creating something valuable and new,
Yeah.
but you're building on a foundation that is already there.
I love that. That framing completely lowers the stakes in the best possible way. But just to build on your renovation analogy a bit, finding the gap isn't just walking into the house and pointing out an empty space where a sunroom could go.
Right.
You have to strategically identify that void and, most importantly, explain the mechanism behind it. Like, why does this specific house need a sunroom?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, how does filling that missing piece actually advance the broader field's understanding of the entire structure?
Okay, so we are looking for a missing piece of the puzzle that actually matters, not a new galaxy. But how do we know what shapes those missing pieces come in? Like, if you are staring at a mountain of literature, where is the blueprint that tells you what to even look for?
Well, we actually have a very specific map of the territory for that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, back in 2017, Dr. D. Anthony Miles built upon some earlier frameworks by researchers like Robinson, Miller-Block, and Krantz, and he created what is known as the taxonomy of 7 research gaps.
7 gaps. Okay.
Yeah, and what makes Miles' work so critical here is that he didn't just list them randomly. He brilliantly ranked them from the most common to the least common.
Wow. Okay. Knowing that ranking is kind of like having a cheat code, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tells you exactly where your highest probabilities of finding a void actually are.
Exactly.
So let's group these because the most common ones seem to really be about taking what we already know and applying it to like untested waters.
Yeah, totally. So the absolute most frequent is the population gap.
Okay, number 1.
Number 1, this occurs when a specific demographic or subpopulation is under-researched or completely ignored in the existing literature. And it is incredibly common because it's just the easiest variable for a researcher to shift.
The source gives a really great example of this regarding remote learning.
Oh, right, the education example.
Yeah, so imagine this massive mountain of literature detailing how remote learning impacts students, but almost all of it focuses on adults or, university students.
Right.
If nobody has rigorously tested how those exact same remote learning tools affect, say, primary school children, that is a population gap.
Oh.
You take the existing framework and just point the lens at a new demographic.
Exactly. And closely following that is the empirical gap. That's the second most common.
The empirical gap.
Yeah. This happens when a topic has been discussed conceptually. Like, people have theorized about it, they've debated it in review papers, built conceptual models.
But they haven't actually tested it.
Right. No study has directly attempted to evaluate it using real-world data.
Because, theorizing is relatively cheap and fast, right?
Yeah.
But designing a longitudinal field study to gather actual data, that takes years.
Yeah.
And funding.
Exactly. So you end up with a lot of talk, but no one has actually run the numbers.
Wow.
Yeah, the literature becomes really top-heavy with theory. So if you can be the one to finally provide the empirical data to test those theories, you are filling a massive void.
Okay, so that's 1 and 2.
But as we move further down Miles's taxonomy, we start to see gaps that represent deeper structural ruts within a field itself.
Which brings us to number 3, the methodological gap.
Ah.
This one is fascinating to me because it really explains how an entire academic discipline can form a giant echo chamber.
Oh, absolutely.
It happens when a field relies on the exact same research methods just over and over again.
It's a comfort zone issue, really. If every prior study on, let's say, consumer satisfaction has relied exclusively on online surveys, that singular method starts to limit the depth of what the field can actually understand.
Right.
Peer reviewers expect surveys, advisors train their students to use surveys, and suddenly the methodology is dictating the results.
Because a survey only gives you the what, and maybe a little bit of the how, but it rarely gives you the deep why.
Exactly.
So stepping in and saying, hey, I am going to study this exact same consumer behavior, but I'm going to use qualitative focus groups and in-depth interviews, that completely shatters that established consensus. You're using a new lens to look at an old problem.
And very often, changing that method reveals the knowledge gap, which is the 4th one on our list.
Okay, the knowledge gap.
Yeah, this is a situation where the desired findings simply don't exist yet, or the results of a study differ drastically from what theoretical models expected to happen.
Like when the mathematical modeling says a newly designed bridge should be able to hold a certain amount of weight under wind shear, but in reality, the physical materials are behaving completely differently.
Yes, perfect example. That discrepancy between expectation and reality is your gap.
Okay.
And that discrepancy often points directly to our 5th category, which is the theoretical gap.
So how is that different from the knowledge gap?
Well, a theoretical gap exists when there's a lack of conceptual models for a subject entirely, or when there's an outright theoretical conflict. Like, you might have 3 totally different theories all trying to explain the exact same phenomenon, and they fundamentally conflict with each other.
Oh, I see. So a researcher could step into that gap by designing a study specifically to test which of those competing theories actually holds up best in a new setting.
Exactly. You're testing the frameworks against each other. Now, we enter the final 2 categories, which are the least common, and they both deal with major contradictions. Number 6 is the evidence gap. This occurs when individual studies seem structurally sound on their own, but when you zoom out and look at the literature holistically, the findings completely contradict each other.
Right. So like, study A proves definitively that a specific classroom technology dramatically improves student test scores.
Yep.
But then study B, using similar methods, proves definitively that the exact same technology does absolutely nothing for test scores.
Exactly. And that contradiction is basically an open invitation for a new researcher. It's an evidence gap calling for someone to investigate the hidden contextual factors driving those differences.
Like, why did it work in study A but not study B? What variable did everyone miss?
Precisely. Which brings us to the seventh and final gap. The source calls it the practical knowledge gap, or the action knowledge conflict.
Action knowledge conflict.
Yeah. This is when real-world professionals are out there in the field doing things completely differently than what academic research currently recommends.
Okay, but wait. The source says it is the least common gap found in the literature.
That's right, number 7.
Hold on. I really have to push back on that ranking.
Okay, let's hear it.
If professionals are ignoring academic advice, and we see that in business management, in clinical medicine, in education, like constantly, how can that possibly be the least common gap? It seems like it should be literally everywhere.
It's a great point. And what's fascinating here is that the mechanism driving that ranking reveals a massive blind spot within academia itself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you are entirely correct that this deviance happens constantly in the real world, but academic literature moves notoriously slowly.
Of course.
Right. By the time a study is funded, conducted, peer-reviewed, and finally published, which can take years, the real-world practitioners have already adapted to a new environment and moved on to a completely new behavior.
So the academics are basically always playing catch-up to the practitioners.
Exactly. So it isn't that the gap doesn't exist in reality. It's just incredibly rare to actually find it documented in the formal academic journals.
Wow, okay. Which means if you are the researcher who can successfully document that real-time disconnect, if you can uncover the scope of the conflict and analyze exactly why professionals are ignoring the established academic consensus, that is highly valuable paradigm-shifting research.
Huge. It's incredibly valuable.
All right, so we have our map. We totally understand the 7 shapes these missing pieces can take. But having a taxonomy doesn't solve the immediate problem of staring at the blank screen today, right now.
No, it doesn't.
Like, how do you actually go into the digital databases and spot these gaps without having to read 10,000 pages of dense academic prose?
This is where Dr. Giri transitions from theory to a very, very practical toolkit. And his first strategy is something he calls the FRIN hunt. That's FRIN.
FRN, what does that stand for?
It stands for further research is needed.
Oh, I love that, because this strategy is incredibly pragmatic. It acknowledges a reality of research that no one wants to admit. Trying to read every single primary paper from start to finish is just a recipe for severe burnout.
It's impossible. So instead, the source advises you to filter your database search to only include systematic reviews, meta-analyses, and dissertations from just the last 5 to 7 years.
Okay, so for anyone who hasn't spent years buried in these databases, a systematic review or a meta-analysis is essentially a paper that has already done the heavy lifting, right? It summarizes hundreds of other individual studies.
Exactly. It synthesizes the current state of the field for you. And by restricting your search to the last few years, you guarantee you are looking at the absolute most current frontier of knowledge.
And here is the really tactical part of this. Once you download those PDFs, you do not read the introduction. You don't read the methodology.
Nope.
You jump straight to the discussion, the limitations, and the future research sections at the very end, because the authors are academically obligated to state what their studies did not cover.
Right. It is literally a required element of the peer review process. They must explicitly suggest what future researchers should investigate to build upon their work.
So you literally just open the PDF, hit Control F, and search for exact phrases like future research, further research, research opportunities, or just limitations.
Yes. You are mining the exact spots where seasoned researchers have already mapped out the voids for you.
It's brilliant.
It really is. The FRIN hunt fundamentally changes your relationship with the literature. You transition from being this, passive reader who is easily overwhelmed by a flood of information into what we might call a predatory reader.
A predatory reader.
Yeah. You are surgically extracting the unused ideas that senior academics were forced to hand over.
I love that concept. It totally takes the power back. But Dr. Giri doesn't stop there. Strategy number 2 is side-by-side limitations mapping.
Right. So when you are looking at those limitations sections we just discussed, the biggest mistake is reading them in isolation.
Okay, why is that a mistake?
Because one paper's limitation might just be a quirk of that specific study, like they just couldn't get enough funding. But if you put 5 to 10 of these recent papers side by side on your monitor.
Oh, I see. You are looking for the structural repetition.
Exactly.
So if you review 10 major papers in your field and you notice that like 8 of them specifically list small sample size or relied on cross-sectional data or maybe single country settings as their primary limitation, you don't have to guess what the field needs anymore.
No, the literature is collectively screaming the gap right at you.
Huh.
You found a systematic, methodological, or empirical gap. And from a psychological standpoint, this is incredibly validating for a novice researcher.
Oh, sure.
It proves to your committee that your proposed study isn't just some random idea you pulled out of thin air. It is a structural necessity that the leading experts are practically begging someone to solve.
Yeah, you've got the receipts. Which leads to the third strategy, and this one relies on modern technology to see things that human eyes would basically miss. Citation network mapping.
Specifically using a tool the source highlights called litmaps.
Litmaps, right. Because if you only rely on traditional keyword searches, you are basically trapping yourself in a silo.
Yeah, because keyword searches only find what you already know how to ask for. Tools like litmaps allow you to visualize how articles connect through their citation networks. But the really brilliant trick Dr. Giri highlights isn't just looking at who cites whom.
What is it?
It's using the tool's similar text algorithm.
Oh, right. So you change the setting so the algorithm finds articles that have highly similar semantic text in their titles and abstracts, but critically do not cite each other.
Yes, they are completely disconnected in the network.
That is wild.
It exposes totally disconnected research domains. Very often you'll have 2 completely different academic disciplines, say behavioral economics and educational psychology, and they are studying the exact same underlying problem.
But because they use slightly different terminology, they have no idea the other discipline's research even exists. It is exactly like realizing that 2 completely different groups of your friends are obsessed with the exact same weird niche hobby.
Yes, perfect analogy.
Like, your work friends are deeply into competitive birdwatching, and your college friends are deeply into competitive birdwatching, but because their social circles never overlap, they've never met. By using the semantic search and litmaps, you get to be the one to introduce them. You bridge the domain gap.
And by synthesizing those disconnected domains, you create a genuinely novel theoretical framework that, honestly, no human could have spotted just by browsing the tables of contents of individual journals.
It's like having a superpower. Okay, so you've avoided the new galaxy trap. You have used the taxonomy map to identify if you are looking at a population gap or a methodological gap. You have successfully hunted it down using the FRI method and mapped it out.
Right.
Now comes the actual friction point.
Yeah.
How do you convince a thesis committee or, a notoriously grumpy journal editor that this void is actually worth their time and funding?
Well, identifying the gap is the internal work, right? Selling it is the external work. And the source provides a highly structured 3-step writing process, again, leaning on Dr. Miles' research, to ensure your proposal statement is just persuasive and logically airtight.
So step 1 is to highlight prior research. You have to succinctly summarize what has already been established, citing 2 to 3 key, highly respected articles, basically to prove to the reader that you know the landscape.
Yes, show you've done the reading. Then step 2 is identifying the gap itself. This is where you pivot. You explicitly state what previous research has failed to do. You clearly point out the contradiction or the missing demographic or the methodological flaw.
And then step 3 is stating your contribution. You provide a definitive statement explaining how your specific proposed study logically fills that exact void.
And what's great is the source even provides structural templates to totally take the guesswork out of the writing.
Oh, like Mad Libs for academics.
Basically, yeah. For example, if you identified an empirical gap, your statement would structurally look like this. While previous studies focus primarily on qualitative research concerning this phenomenon, no study to date has directly attempted to empirically evaluate it. Therefore, an empirical investigation is necessary because... And then you explain the mechanism.
It really is a paint-by-numbers approach to academic persuasion. But there is a crucial caveat here.
Oh. What's that?
Well, what if you write this perfect, beautiful 3-step statement? You highlight the research, you identify the gap, you state your contribution flawlessly, but the gap itself turns out to be completely trivial.
Oh, I see what you mean. Give me an example.
Okay, let's say you do your massive literature review and you realize that absolutely nobody has studied the left-handed knitting habits of 19th century naval sailors.
Okay.
It is a very real gap. The literature is totally silent on it. But nobody actually cares because it doesn't impact anything. How do you avoid dedicating 2 years of your life to proposing a study that fills a gap no one actually wants filled?
Yeah, that is the ultimate pitfall. And the source addresses it through a framework called the research gap audit.
Research gap audit.
Yes. Before you commit your time and resources, you have to run your proposed gap through a rigid set of feasibility and significance questions.
So what are we actually asking in this audit?
Well, you have to ask, does filling this gap resolve a meaningful inconsistency in the literature?
Okay.
Does it serve a genuinely unrepresented population that needs advocacy? Or does it fix a methodological flaw that is currently holding back the broader advancement of the field?
Right.
Your left-handed sailor example is indeed a gap, but it completely fails the significance audit. Because filling it doesn't change how we understand naval history or textile manufacturing in any meaningful way.
Yeah, going back to our house analogy, if filling the void doesn't actually change the structural integrity of the house we were renovating, it just isn't a gap worth your time.
Precisely. A valid research gap must push the boundaries of knowledge in a way that forces the rest of the field to adjust their understanding.
Wow. When you put all of these pieces together, what we are really talking about is a profound mindset shift for anyone listening to this who feels stuck.
Absolutely.
Systematically finding a gap, understanding the taxonomy of what a gap actually is, hunting for clues in the limitations sections, auditing your idea for true significance. This is the exact moment you transition from being a consumer of other people's knowledge to becoming a creator of new knowledge.
It's incredibly empowering.
You are stepping out of the audience and taking your place on the stage.
And as you prepare to take that step, I think there is a really fascinating implication regarding those digital mapping tools we discussed earlier.
The lit map stuff.
Yeah. We explored how tools like that can use semantic algorithms to instantly spot disconnected research domains and theoretical voids that human researchers just missed.
Right, the algorithm is doing all the heavy lifting of finding the missing pieces.
Exactly. Which raises a pretty provocative question about the near future of academia.
Oh boy. Okay, what is it?
Well, if these algorithms are already capable of mapping out the semantic voids in our collective knowledge today, how long until artificial intelligence can automatically identify, categorize, and rank every single possible research gap in a given scientific field?
Oh, wow. That completely flips the script on the doctoral process, doesn't it?
It really does. Like, will the researchers of tomorrow no longer need to be trained as gap hunters? Will they merely be gap fillers?
Just opening up a dashboard and selecting their next multi-year project from an AI-generated menu of missing human knowledge.
Right. The fundamental nature of academic discovery might be shifting from finding the question to just executing the answer.
That is a wild thought to ponder. The next time you fire up a database, stare at the search bar, and watch that cursor blink. Maybe the machine already knows exactly what you should be writing about. You just have to ask it where the empty room is.
Something to think about for sure.
Well, thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. Whether you are upgrading the plumbing on a classic theory or finally building that new sunroom for an underserved population, remember, you don't need to discover a new galaxy. You just need to systematically find your missing piece. Catch you next time.